The Bush administration had decided to beef up Border Patrol. The way that they did that is they funneled billions of dollars into Border Patrol so they can beef up security on our borders. Now, while they did that, they decided that maybe the Border Patrol should also focus on drug arrests as well as undocumented immigrants.
Of course.
And as a result, the war on drugs continues. And the whole point, I'm sure, initially was to focus on cartel violence. Sure. But instead of that, of course, we start arresting more and more people for minor drug offenses. Now, the next video that we show you is from TYT Investigates. We're now doing original reporting that you guys can find on youtube.com/TYT Investigates. And in this story, our investigative reporter, Chavala, goes to Sierra Blanca in Texas, and she discovers what's happening with these questionable checkpoints. Let's take a look at the first video.
Customs and Border Protection has now become the largest law enforcement agency in the country.
The majority of our activity is going to be within the first 30 miles of the border, because that's where our primary focus is.
Most Americans may not know it, but there is a second line of defense. A network of domestic checkpoints up to 100 miles away from Mexico. These internal checkpoints also received an influx of agents as well as new gear and sniffer dogs. We went to check out a particularly notorious one, Sierra Blanca, in the middle of nowhere on Interstate 10 in West Texas.
Hey ma'am, is everyone on board a citizen?
Yes, sir.
This is where a host of American celebrities have been busted for drugs. Snoop Dogg, Fiona Apple, and of course Willie Nelson, while rolling through in his tour bus. Checkpoints like this were set up to catch illegal immigrants and major drug traffickers. But the Center for Investigative Reporting has found that instead, this Border Patrol checkpoint is ensnaring mostly Americans. Thousands of U.S. citizens traveling within their own country.
So I love this. And of course, look, it's part of our documentary series. It's the second one in the series. First one was Who Took Down Stockton, and we did it with Center for Investigative Reporting. But I love the stories that you find here. So, because we were just in the middle of an immigration bill discussion, and remember the Republicans demanded so many more billions of dollars be poured into border control. But they're, in this case, as you see, they're not actually controlling the border. They're inside the United States, 30 miles, sometimes 100 miles inside the United States, and they're not busting illegal immigrants. Largely, they're busting Americans. I got news for you. Snoop Dogg is not an undocumented immigrant. Neither is Willie Nelson, right? And so it becomes a money-making exercise.
It definitely does. And of course, the federal government is helping to fund this. So as a result, they're paying for the prosecution and the detention of these U.S. citizens that get caught with a relatively small amount of marijuana. So as you guys know, we think that that's a huge waste of money, and you should probably be focusing that money on something that's more important. So if you genuinely do care about beefing up border security, this is not really the way to do it. Now in Sierra Blanca, it's a tiny town. There are about 500 people there. However, last year alone, they had jailed over 3,000 people.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
What does this have to do with border security? This is crazy. So, of course, about money. I think that leads to our next part of the video,
Yeah,
right?
so let's watch the next part. And it actually has to do with budget cuts. So this could be an interesting twist to the story.
The system of netting small fry offenders at checkpoints and turning them over to local sheriffs to prosecute is starting to break down. In fact, with all the budget cuts in Washington, it's about to get a lot worse for the locals.
Yesterday was a big shocker.
Yolanda Esparza is the county auditor. She was preparing the county's invoice to the federal government when she got some startling news.
It was a shocker for all of us. On the guidelines, the first thing that they had on there, and it's in red, as you can see, for this year, for 2013, the Bureau of Justice Assistance will only reimburse prosecution cost and will no longer reimburse us for the detention cost under the Southwest Border Prosecution Program. We'll be housing the inmates for nothing. We will not get reimbursed for any of it.
What if you guys just say, we're not taking any more?
I don't know if it's legal or to stop taking them, but at this point, we don't know what else to do. We cannot afford to be housing them and not get reimbursed for it, you know? So it's devastation for us, really devastation for the county.
So that's something that conservatives are right about. They often complain in the States about these unfunded mandates. The federal government comes in here and says, do this, and in the beginning they give you money, and then later go, sorry, we cut the funding, good luck to you. Now, in this case, they're down on the border. They're like, okay, you told us to arrest these guys. We arrested them. We arrested 3,000 last year. And then they say, okay, you're going to pay. I'm going to pay for a part of it, but not for their detention. Good luck to you. Well, how the hell am I going to pay for it? The town's only 500 people, as Anna pointed out. I got 3,000 people I arrested. Now I got to pay that? Those townspeople have to pay that? That's crazy. So it's a way of look, in the beginning it was about making money, right?
Yes.
And then it became like, well, okay, we're spending a ton of money, don't get me wrong, billions of dollars on the war on drugs. But they realized, oh, right, we got to give that to the guys who are giving donations to the national politicians, right? So that gets funded to like the guys who are doing private security for a lot of the Latin American governments. They're teaching them how to fight the war on drugs. The billions get funneled that way. And your local American community gets screwed. You get the bill, you get none of the upside. And what happened to border security? This doesn't have anything to do with border security.
None at all. This does nothing with illegal immigration. And by the way, I know that Republicans want to make a big deal over illegal immigration right now, but illegal immigration is at a record low in this country. People are leaving the country because the economy is so bad. Less Mexicans want to come to the country because they know that there aren't many jobs here. So if you do research, you'll find out that illegal immigration last year was at a net zero because so many people were leaving while few were coming in.
But we've already set that train in motion. We got those border checks that aren't really on the border. You got to keep checking people and you got to keep arresting Americans.
Exactly.
They tell the story of one kid there who got arrested, and it's one of, again, 3,000 stories, but you're like, they were going on their way to Austin. He had a little pod. Now they got to pay $2,000. He had to stay in jail overnight. That's why it's a great documentary. You got to watch the whole thing.
Absolutely. We have one other clip that I couldn't help but show you guys, and this is actually a sheriff who is very supportive of the war on drugs. However, he does a critique of what the government has done so far. Let's take a look.
As a law enforcement officer, you have to ask yourself the question, what's next? Murders? Rapists? That we're going to let walk down the street. We got to draw the line somewhere, and that's not happening in the drug trade. For 40-something years, we fought this war on drugs. For 40-something years, we have lost our butts on this. And I don't care what Napolitano tells you, what Obama tells you, what Reagan tells you. We have lost our butts on this. We are so far behind the curve on this, it's pathetic.
Damn.
And look, that right there in a nutshell is exactly what happened in the war on drugs. We lost our butts on it. Financially and in the great harm that it's done to the American people. And it's time to stop this nonsense. But check out the documentary to get a sense of what's happening on the borders and how ridiculous it's become and how it has such little to do with actual border security or controlling our borders at all.